A member of our Discord community recently brought something to my attention that made me stop working on my next regular video in order to quickly talk about this. This is a good example that just because somebody is a wonderful entertainer and a positive human being does not mean that you should accept their opinions as if they knew what they're talking about. One of Albion's beloved and most known streamers has recently been blatantly misrepresenting stats in order to create a narrative around the game, which in my opinion is completely wrong. He's trying to convince Albion Online players that people don't play this game for PvP.
Focus on giving the players what they actually want, because the stats are clear. People don't play this game for PvP.
This is complete bullshit. Let's break down why it is so. Keep in mind that just like any MMO, the fun experience of Albion comes together from a combination of many different aspects, activities, and ways to play the game. But saying that people do not play it for PvP while referring to a Steam achievement stat is a very weak attempt to create a false narrative. Let's break this down. After insisting that PvP players are a minority, he acknowledges the specialty of Steam stats, but says that he has already debunked it in an earlier video.
We are part of a minority within this game, and that's a fact. Yet this minority gets 99% of all the updates. And by the way, yes, for those stats, I am using Steam stats. A lot of people are parroting the idea that Steam stats cannot be trusted, but we debunked that in the video that just popped up in the corner over there. So if you believe that as well, please check it out and you're gonna see that.
So let's check it out indeed. How exactly did he debunk the idea that Steam achievement stats are a terrible way to represent the nature of Albion?
Albion is a PvP game only for 7.5% of the players who ever got a kill or an assist. Know what you're thinking? Mogdone, you son of a witch! Those are Steam stats. They cannot be trusted, for they have been plagued by bots and people that don't really play. Traveler, you're not wrong. Steam probably does hold the minority of Albion Online players, and it's also home of all the GeForce Now bots that people are using. However, that doesn't make this as inaccurate as you might think. You have to understand, in every open survey that people host in real life, you cannot ask every single person what they think of a certain topic. What you do is you select a group of people and you make them representatives of everyone else.
So he himself refers to the idea of a representative sample. It's a concept used in statistics and surveys, but he completely ignores the fact that this doesn't just mean that any 1,000 people sample will always qualify as a representative sample. Using Steam stats as a representative sample of PvP activity is the equivalent of asking 100 French people what kind of bread they enjoy and then concluding that baguette is the most popular type of bread in Europe. Not only do Steam players form about 8% of the total Albion population, it is a non-representative group because it is a platform where people just launch Albion once or twice in order to try out this free game and then never play again. And anyone who has launched the game once counts as a data point for Steam statistics. Using 7.5% as a gauge of PvP activity conveniently ignores the fact that over 50% of people who count as Steam players didn't even kill a few mobs to get 1,000 fame. But what about the other 50% who at least play the game for a day or two? Are they legit players then? What are they doing if they're not engaging in PvP? Maybe they're focused on classical beginner activities like gathering, 11%. Or maybe they are crafting, 10%. So are they trying out Arena to see the combat? 5%. All of these numbers are so low not because it is representative of actual player statistics and activities. These achievements and Mogdone would suggest that 90% of people who play Albion in fact do not do anything in the game at all. These numbers are in fact actually so low because Steam counts players who launched the game, saw the art style and quit. It counts players who killed a couple mobs, got confused by what to do and quit. It counts those who quit in character creation. On top of this, those who actually do try out the game and enjoy it sometimes move to the proprietary launcher and start getting their achievements there. Pointing to this 7.5% even as a more or less accurate metric of PvP interest, like it's a fact, is insulting to viewers' intelligence. So is Albion a PvP-centric game then? And the answer, in my opinion, is obviously yes. People who enjoy PvP in one form or another, remember, we're not talking about going into the mists with high level gear. We're talking about PvP as a whole and all the different wonderful ways to experience this. The answer, in my opinion, is obviously yes. Albion Online is a PvP-centric game, but that will never mean that it should be the only focus on how the game develops. Just like Mogdone, I in fact love that there seems to be a push towards branching out into more mainstream gaming loops to some extent. Even today in the game, I love the fact that we're all playing the same game together, even though we're doing it with completely different approaches and different focuses. A guy who spends his whole Albion time running between markets and crafting stations essentially is playing a different game from me. But I love the fact that we exist together in the same shared world. It's the social feeling of an MMO. And at the end of the day, economy players form the basis for PvP. When I tell you in my guide how to make silver, that all of those calculations and ideas are founded on the economy of the game. And on the other hand, PvP players, when we fight each other, kill each other and go out and buy gear again, we create the basis for an exciting and real economy. And many of us players, of course, enjoy both sides of the game. Going forward, I suggest that you don't believe the bullshit about PvP being a minority interest within Albion. It remains the core of the game, but I do think there are at least two very clear ways in which Albion can take the already valuable gaming mechanics and game loop that it has created and start becoming more mainstream than it is today. So here are two things that I believe Albion should think about going forward if it wants to become a more mainstream game. Number one is something that I actually coined the term myself. Maybe already in some forms this idea exists, but I call it time to fun. So if you play any FPS games, you know that they have the TTK, time to kill. How long does it take to kill how many bullets essentially to kill an enemy? And similarly, where I take breaks from Albion, and over some of these breaks, I realize that when I'm busy with life, when there's other things going on, I'm tired and I haven't opened the game for 2 weeks, how much easier it is for me to jump into a game of Marvel Rivals, even Rainbow Six Siege, which is pretty hardcore, one of the popular MOBAs, to just open the game, find a match, have some fun, and then go back to doing other things. Albion Online's time to fun, how long it takes you from the moment you click launch game to when you're actually having fun, is very long. And I believe that is one of the key focuses for the game going forward, that it could potentially solve in order to become more mainstream. This obviously affects everyone to some extent, but especially if you're a new player or if you're coming after a break. As we all know, if you're a PvP player, even taking a couple days or a week off, you come back and you feel kind of rusty. It would be great to have more ways to just jump into the action, at least in some form. Of course, creating Brazilian and Mists greatly improved the game in this aspect and also made it a lot more popular for PvP activities. Having maps that you can buy for Hellgates and Corrupted Dungeons are a great way to improve time to fun, and I believe that Albion is already moving in this direction, and I hope it continues to do so. So instead of believing this false stats that Albion players do not play it for PvP, accept that of course they are, and try to figure out ways to make this PvP more easily accessible to someone who just wants to have a little bit of more casual fun and not run around Mists for 8 hours a day. And the second big thing that I believe can help Albion become a mainstream game long term is changing its genre identity. Now this is a bit more complex, and maybe I'll make a separate video analyzing this, but for today, the idea that I think is holding Albion back a little bit is that we have been classified very clearly as an MMO. And in my experience, looking at my own gaming habits and those of some of my friends and how they have seen Albion, in my experience, Albion caters greatly to players who are not so much MMO RPG enthusiasts, but instead enjoy the competitive nature of the game. In my opinion, rather than inviting comparisons to other established MMORPG titles and trying to bring MMO players into the hardcore, full loot PvP type of environment, Albion would be much more successful trying to take players who play competitive games like League of Legends, Dota 2, and even FPS games to try to get those players to enjoy some less stressful, less toxic, unless you use the global chat, less stressful, less toxic environment where your progress over time does also matter. One day in the future I'll make a video backing up this opinion with more examples and some proof from other games' experience, but for now this is just what I think as someone observing and playing Albion. Whichever activity I'm enjoying in Albion Online, I love the fact that it is in a world built around PvP at its core. And regardless of how much you enjoy PvP, I love the fact that we are sharing this common world. But if you are a PvP interested player, we are not a minority. See you in the next video.